There were a couple things that were said about Tavares and Matthews yesterday that I actually thought were a lot more insightful than what we got from Tavares and Matthews and Brad Treliving, because those guys, when they first got trotted out there, it felt a little awkward. This is one thing that I didn't really hit on, is Treliving was trying to kind of make the dad jokes and, oh, it's so bright and I can't see ya. Oh, shucks. He was doing that routine, and you're like, okay. And then Tavares and Matthews, Tavares is the signed statement or the prepared statement, and sending it over to Matthews, who looks excited but can't really muscle out too much because it's a tough situation for him. He can't be too excited knowing that it's a tough day for Tavares. It's not your normal captaincy day. But when these other guys ended up getting their media availabilities, I thought that out of the limelight of being in front of the center stage, there was a couple of things that were said that made me reflect on it just a little bit more. And so I just do a little bit of housekeeping today. The first thing I just want to say about it is I actually commend the Tavares move more the more I think about it, because it really does seem obvious to a lot of people. And yes, of course, this was the right move. No one can really debate that. I think if you're trying to downplay Matthews getting the captaincy, you're just being a contrarian to be a contrarian. You're probably someone where people don't even like bringing stuff to you because you just immediately are like, well, actually, and you go, why did I even mention a thing? It's actually kind of like my producer, Mike Jose, is he needs to learn how to do that, because it's like, hey man, here's a cool thing. And then he goes, yeah, here's one. And he's like, oh, he ruins it immediately. And so you go, you know what? Never mind. You know what? Next time, never mind. Tavares sacrificed a lot. This is a guy, again, who has put everything in his life into hockey and family, but this is a hockey player. Dyed in the wool, just grew up in a family of athletes and athletics, went on to be someone that Maple Leaf fans wanted before he was eligible to be drafted, is someone that this city dreamed on. But for him, again, a guy that was scoring goals at every single level all the way up. His teams. If you played a team with John Tavares' team, you didn't call it by any other name until recently. And whatever, but to get to a spot like that, you probably have to have an ego. That is somewhere in you, even for humble guys, even for someone like him who doesn't come off as, a diva wide receiver or a volume shooter on an NBA team, right? It doesn't come off the same way, but either way, it's clearly in him, that massive drive. And when he brought up the statement, we went over it a little bit yesterday during the Leafs talk, but the thing that I think is a little bit more meaningful, if you're trying to, squeeze anything out of this, he made a genuine sacrifice. And this is a team that has been criticized over and over and over again for guys not making sacrifices. And it's not just the financial sacrifices. Last year, it was playoff sacrifices. Whether it was people questioning how much somebody could have played through something, or, avoiding finishing checks in corners, right? Not enough sacrifice has been made with this team. And for John Tavares to do this, I actually think that it's his greatest move as captain from a leadership standpoint. It's the first time there's been a meaningful, consequential, you cannot deny it, sacrifice. And I thought about this more and more, like listening to those little segments, those little snippets from one of his teammates and from his, president, because the guy used to play, you're reminded of that when he stands next to these guys, Brendan Shanahan, he's like hulking, and you go, whoa, right. You beat up Jerome McGinley badly. You were tough. Probably still are, actually. I don't know. Probably, hey, Brendan Shanahan can say a lot of things. Probably still pretty damn tough. Probably still punch your lights out with ease, with relative ease. I think, me and my friends, we do this test where we call it the poison booth. And it's when you see a color analyst with the play-by-play guy, and you say, if the booth started to fill with poison, how long would the color analyst, would it take for him to kill the play-by-play guy? And it's like, you set the over-under at the time. I think my poison booth time with Brendan Shanahan would be 13 seconds. I think that's like I think that's how long it would take for him to kill me in a confined space. Like, obviously, pretty tough guy. Still a very, very tough guy. Anyways, I wanted to play a couple of these clips because, yes, they did remind me of what this is, and then I want to talk about a little bit of the reverb off of it. Anyways, let's play Morgan Rielly first.
I think it speaks volumes about who John is as a person and where his priorities lie. I think for him, the only thing that really matters is our team and the results that we're able to get during the season, and what's best for our group. And I think you're right. I think that when this came about, I'm sure that there were some challenges there for him, but I think he's handled everything like the class act that he is. And I had a chance to speak with him, and I think the first thing that I felt was just how well he's handling it, and his view on things. And so as this has kind of come about, I think he's been outstanding. And but that's no surprise to anyone. That's how he operates. So I think Austin's fortunate to have that relationship with John. And as a team, we're extremely fortunate to have the two of them working together.
So this is the biggest takeaway for me when it comes to Tavares thing. We're talking about his legacy and how it could be difficult. And for those of us on the outside of this, it's harder to, I think, understand than it is for people that are inside of it, who work their asses off to get that honor, where they go, man, this is a real signifier of where you're at in your career and who you are in the league. And to lose it, that people are going to talk about your game and where you're at and what your legacy is while you're still playing it, while you're still in that, what you consider to be the peak. And that does have to be tough. And listening to Rielly speak there, one of the guys who I think is probably now, it used to be Muzzin, but now I think he is the most honest and genuine window into the psyche of the Leafs team on a whole. I think he's really well-spoken. I think he's pretty thoughtful, and he doesn't hold back as much. And maybe part of it is that that just is the kind of guy he is. Maybe part of it is that he was here before it seemed to get so bogged down in the corporate speak, like before this team got that level of you're not getting anything out of them. But Rielly's really good at it. He's a good speaker, and I think that there's an honesty to him that is a little bit different from other players in the league, and certainly other players right now that are on this team. And yeah, hearing him say that, I think that one of the coolest things for Tavares moving forward, and one of the things that I would tell him is, I think that your teammates who may have not bought into you as the rah-rah leader, maybe you weren't the guy that they followed or wanted to follow into the foxhole, are more willing to do it after seeing this, that there is going to be more of a rallying around you of the people that matter because of this selfless act. And that hopefully part of this legacy is that a couple of your teammates are going to take note and end up doing the same thing. Maybe it's wishful thinking. Maybe it's gleaning too much from it. But I think that there's actually I know when I see that from my leaders, that it has an impact. When you see somebody sacrifice for the greater good, it's hard to ignore. Anyways, here's Shanahan's clip on John, because this one resonated with me too.
How difficult it would have been for him to have to stand out there and do what he did today?
I disagree. I think that John's a cerebral guy, and John saw it and understood it as well as we did, that the time was right. And John, I've known the Tavares family from his uncle and lacrosse days, and I know what they're made of and the kind of team players that they are, and they always are thinking about what's best for the team. So I wasn't surprised at all to see like John embracing the idea and concept, and as he said, he has one goal here, and anything that he thinks that can help pull the team further along, he wants to do. So I think that John is a unique individual and wanted to be a part of that, and wanted to certainly certainly help Auston along the way as well.
And that's it. And that's a great way to summarize who John Tavares was as captain of this team. Was it disappointing tenure? Yes. Were there moments where, you rolled your eyes because it was hockey cliches and low energy, monotone? Yes. It was. It's just that it's a big part of it. Did he deliver on what was going to be a promise that seemed to be made when it was 3 talented young pieces that this team had not seen in the salary cap era or hell, the post-6 hockey team era? Yes. Yes. A lot of failing. This was not great accomplishments. A lot of it. No. But the thing we always heard about John Tavares' leadership style was lead by example. And I think it speaks to him a little bit that a lot of us that discussed this and a lot of us that looked at it kind of did think, hey, this is sort of a given. And yes, it's happened in hockey before. And yes, there have been other guys. And this is like, little bit of Leafs just over. I'm trying to think of a word that it wasn't inappropriate because that was where I was at with it. Is a little too much credit for the Leafs, let's say. Too much credit. Yeah, probably. Man, I'm doing a Leaf show. Anyways, I think that it was what John Tavares' career in some ways had been leading towards with all the lead by example stuff. And the fact that, yes, he did look up to his uncle, who was a dominant scorer and someone who, is an all-time legend in lacrosse to the point where, you might know who he is and I know who he is. But all of that kind of training for the team ended up being really important at this juncture as, it's a group that has failed and is in the spotlight with a big media market. And you listen to the way that these guys spoke yesterday, and it's tough because, again, they don't want to sound like they're disparaging John Tavares. But a lot of us, or at least for me anyways, missed how big of a deal this loss was for him because he is such a sacrifice guy and because he has been such a lead by example kind of dude that it just sort of felt obvious. And I don't know if there's as many players and that are going to be even coming forward now that are going to be quite like that. Anyways, other quick things. One, I thought that the stuff that I was asking for, by the way, Elliot Freeman on 32 Thoughts, which he did a surprise summer pod. It's up on all the feeds. But he also mentioned that, the extension has been discussed. And it's something both sides are considering, but that, it wasn't going to be brought up yesterday at all because they didn't want to overshadow the Matthews stuff, which is obvious. But, I do think, and now this is me speaking, I think that yesterday, the way that all of that happened made it a near certainty that John Tavares is going to be extended as a Maple Leaf. Like, I at this point, I would be blown away. And I always believed he was going to stay here and that this is where he was going to be. He set up roots here. He's got a house here. This is where his family is. He came here in the first place. I don't think that he's chasing money. He's chasing legacy and comfort. He's got a ton of money. He's happy here. He's now going to be more liked here. He's going to be more revered by his teammates here. It makes too much sense. But now I think that he and the organization have clearly established that they're on the same page and that this is a relationship that's going to continue moving forward. The other quick things I mentioned, I think that Berube and Shanahan both actually hit on why Matthews is the guy and what I actually think is basically the entire thing with captaincies going forward in terms of tangible stuff. So here's Berube.
Sorry, what you learned about Auston, what do you think to make him a great captain?
Influence,
Pause.
Obviously his...
Pause. I could have just played that. Influence. He has influence. And then I'm going to play the rest of the answer because he kind of does try to couch it with the stuff of like compliments to Tavares, right? But this was the problem with yesterday in terms of not being able to get all the stuff, the positive stuff to say about Matthews. Because everything that you would say about him would seem in contrast like those are the things that John doesn't have, but that is it. That is the reason why he is the captain over John Tavares. More so than the skill, more so than, anything else, is that there is a magnetism to Auston Matthews where every group of friends has this guy where your group of friends might be doing something and you go, I don't know who's going. And then there's the one person and you go, oh, okay, yeah, I'll go. You get the one group guy who's like, yeah, I'm going to go. Hey, he rallies the boys. He rallies the people and says, yeah, I'm doing it. And you're like, ah, damn, all right, I guess I will go. This seemed a little scary and intimidating, but that guy's going, so I guess we'll do that. And Matthews is that dude on the Leafs. And plain and simple, most of this captaincy is not about the jersey sales. And yeah, is that nice little bonus peak? Sure, I'm sure it is, even though I do think that they should just put the C on the sweaters. Like if you want to bring it into a team shop if you're you're a fan of a team that hasn't won since 1967 and you pay a lot of money for all of your Leafs merch and you support them with expensive tickets and blah, 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 blah. I think if you have a Matthews sweater and it doesn't have a C on it, that the team should just, they should hook you up. They should hook you up with that little patch. That would be nice. Anyway, let's play the rest of Berube.
Influence, obviously his the great player he is, but it's his work ethic off the ice and how he prepares day in and day out. He's at an elite level, in my opinion, in that department. I've witnessed it firsthand. Constantly working, trying to get better. He's a team-first guy. He's the type of guy that's going to take care of his teammates like John Tavares did, and that's what makes a good captain.
Everything he said after Influence, if that was all it was about Matthews, Tavares would still be captain. Every single thing he mentioned there is a John Tavares trait. They're actually all the traits that we heard when Tavares was named captain. But the one that was missing was influence. And that's why, after he said it, that's why it was the first thing that came to mind, even for a guy that hasn't been here, who's getting to know these dudes over Zoom calls. It's like, he knows it. And the whole league knows it. And you know it too. Anyways, here's Shanahan also kind of saying the same thing.
Something on the outside we don't see about what Auston Matthews does every day.
Well, there's lots of things you could describe, but I think the intangible that was alluded to today is, he has the ability that people want to follow him. And not that John didn't have that, but Auston, we're now drafting players that had posters of Auston Matthews up on their wall when they were little kids. So Auston has that ability that he is. It's not something that he has worked on. It's just something he was born with. People want to follow him and are drawn to him. I think giving him this time and this runway up until this point of his career and not putting that kind of pressure on him as an 18-year-old and allowing him to watch some of the leaders that have been here in front of him has helped get to this point where he's evolved, where he's ready to do this.
That's it. They said it. People want to follow him and are drawn to him. That's influence. That's why he's the captain of the Maple Leafs. Plain and simple. It's not the skill. It's not the work ethic. Those things are all great. It's not the competitive drive. Those are some of the reasons why he wanted to have this honor bestowed upon him. But the tangible thing that might have an impact, if there is anything from a on the ice this season perspective, is that. And moving forward is, again, who you're getting your orders from. You know who you want to impress. It's the guy with the influence, and now it's the guy with the C. Anyway, one last thing from yesterday, and this is sort of a throwaway thing. This has nothing to do with the captaincy, but they asked, everything with the Leafs is framed through the question of how does this help you win? How does this get you the cup, right? This is what I've been doing, this segment. It's about winning. Otherwise, who cares? All of it is done through that lens, kind of to a annoying degree, right? Because sometimes you can't even enjoy the small moments and I don't blame anybody for it. Again, there's been no winning since 1967. And there's been a lot of resources, a lot of opportunities. Things have been squandered here. And I think that there's people that are directly responsible for some of those things. Culture setters, whatever. You want to go through it. It's been a tough go. So whenever people go, I'm never really going to tell you, or I don't really want to tell you. I shouldn't say I never will because sometimes you gotta. But I don't really want to tell you how to fan. But anyways, they asked Berube about how they're going or how this is going to impact getting to the Stanley Cup or something along those lines.
It's a process to get to the top of the mountain. I'm not going to comment on getting to the top of the mountain. It's a process from training camp on, and Austin's going to learn on the way too. He has learned a lot from John Tavares, obviously, and other leaders in this organization that they've had. And he just needs to be himself and go and play the game, play at a high level like he does. And obviously, there's other things being the captain now that you got to take care of and things like that. But those are all things that we'll talk about.
It's interesting that a coach that was hired because he has won a Stanley Cup, and there are other factors, I know, but that's the main thing that's in the lead of his resume as a coach. 1 Stanley Cup. He doesn't want to talk at all about the Stanley Cup. And not every organization does this because you'd be going, this isn't a novel thing. He's not reinventing the wheel. A lot of coaches, they do the 1 day at a time, control what you can control, 1 step, 1 foot in front of the other, walk before you can run, that kind of thinking when it comes to building a team out for an entire season. Not novel. But there are groups like, look at the Buffalo Bills last year, for example. They showed up to training camp and they had banners in their facility with the eyes on the Lombardi. It was like a visor with a Lombardi in their sights because that was the goal, is winning the Super Bowl. I don't think these Leafs players need any more reminding of that. I don't think that they need any more all-ins because that's what it's been here for the last couple of seasons. It's all in. It's all in. Nobody cares until the playoffs. Stanley Cup, Stanley Cup, Stanley Cup. And guess what? It's going to continue to be that way largely from a narrative standpoint. Most fans, a lot of media members, it's going to be driven around, hey, how does this help them win? How does this help them get over that hump? Because we've been through enough. We've been through enough regular seasons. It's the same core. People want to see them take that step. Otherwise, you're guilty until you do that. You need to show your bona fides because people threw flowers at your feet and they praised you and you got the keys to the city before you accomplished anything. You got the money, you got the praise, you got the adulation, all of it. And then nothing was delivered in the most important time of the season. Everyone's aware of it now. I like that this guy was brought in here to, again, bring Stanley Cup experience and to help them get over that hump, to help them evolve as a team, but that the tact, immediately you can see this being a little different. And again, if we're just looking for clues, which is all we're trying to do here, it's the middle of summer, I understand. But if I'm looking for things that are going to be somewhat meaningful for me, when I was listening to all of this stuff yesterday, Craig Berube talking about how he is going to do a good job, I think, hopefully, of shielding these guys from the constant narrative of cup, and just let them play out this season and not have that be a major detractor, focus, or pressure point. Because frankly, the all-in season, Amazon's following you around because you must win the cup this year. If you do not win the cup this year, everyone will be fired. Everyone will be traded. Now the threats are kind of hollow and empty anyways because the only guy that left was Kyle Dubas, and the only reason that he did leave is because he overplayed his hand in a negotiation. It wasn't even like, it's like power struggle and overplayed his hand and he lost the power struggle. It wasn't even really accountability. He won the one playoff round and everyone went, extend! It really was that. Nobody's moved on. What? The accountability was Michael Bunting not getting a big contract instead? Like, who was the accountable party here? Like, what is the Samsonov hitting free agency? Like, who's been held accountable? Anyway, I just think it's a kind of a nice, refreshing tone from their coach that it isn't maybe going to feel that way, which every day is. These are the habits that are going to make us win a cup. This is the thing that's going to make us win a cup. This is the all or nothing. That this guy seems to be taking the tact of, I'm not going to discuss how a captaincy affects winning a Stanley Cup. It's just too far. Not everything needs to be done through that framework. And I think it's going to be great if he's able to maintain some consistency on that. He's also not someone, I mentioned Sheldon Keefe made my job easier. A media conference like that, where you're watching Berube speak and he's giving an answer like that, I think he's going to make it a little bit harder. Anyways, subscribe to this podcast, leave 5 stars. Again, always helps me out. Follow on Twitter and Instagram at JD Bunkis. Reach out anytime.